Welcome to Artificially Intelligent Marketing, a weekly podcast where we stay on top of the latest trends, tips, and tools in the world of marketing AI, helping you get the best results from your marketing efforts. Now let's join our hosts, Paul Avery and Martin Broadhurst.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Artificially Intelligent Marketing, episode 52, but the first episode of 2026. Paul Avery here, joined as always by Martin Broadhurst. Happy New Year, Martin. How you doing?
Great, Paul. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not even sure if it is actually me here or if it's one of the many agents or sub-agents that I have operating for me and on behalf of me at any given time at the moment. It's been a busy start to the new year, testing out all of these new AI tools, more of which later.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, across the camera here, you are oozing charisma. So I know for sure it's one of your agents. Well, it's the start of 2026. So of course, we have the obligatory trends and predictions episode. So for all those people who've probably already listened to 50 of these of different types, here's another one. But we've got some interesting takes, potentially a few contrarian takes in here as well. So I think it's hopefully still going to be worth your time, dear listener. So why don't we just get straight on into it then? What do we think AI is going to look like for marketers by the end of 2026? What's your first prediction, Martin?
So mine is that the small AI, scrappy little startup, you might have heard of them, they're known as Google. They are going to launch a new version of Chrome with a fully agentic browser experience akin to Perplexity's Comet or Claude for Chrome. I think this one is just so obvious, the way that the whole market is moving. They don't have one at the moment, but the Gemini platform could so easily jump right in there. And to be honest, having been using these tools for a while now, both Perplexity's Comet and Claude for Chrome, which I've been playing around with for the past couple of weeks, I just think that it's a must-have, essential add-on to the browser experience. And for marketers, well, let me tell you, if you can get to grips with understanding how to prompt and instruct these agentic browsers, there is a massive unlock for individual productivity to be had.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about Google having one specifically, just because I would expect the capabilities in a bunch of work-driven platforms to be way better. You know, we're a Google Apps organization, so Gmail, Google Drive, Google Slides, Google Docs, the ability to say, go search a bunch of these files and then write something in this document and then update this spreadsheet and then mark the Trello card done. Like, that would be really quite nice if we could get some level of agentic behavior built into Chrome. Knows a lot about us already, whether we like it or not, in terms of the websites we visit, and should be logged into a bunch of stuff that we want to be able to do things in automatically. And yeah, it feels like a no-brainer, but they've been a bit notoriously slow. I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say this capability exists within Google already and it just hasn't been launched. So why the hold up?
Yeah, I would agree. They're probably testing this extensively internally because they want to get it right. Every new product release that comes out of Google is scrutinized probably more heavily and more closely than competitors. Perplexity can throw out Comet and people go, oh, that's cool, and it does some tasks over a short time horizon. But if Google were to launch a similar product that had a similar short time horizon, people might go, oh, it's a bit crap. So I think they'll probably want to get it right to the point where it can run and execute tasks over the long term and maybe manage sub-agents so they can show something that's like really impressive and makes people go, oh yeah, this is special. And I think you're right. The integration that they've got with the Google Workspace environment, the authentication that they have through Google authentication tools, and just the vast amount of user data that they'll have on behavior will make their agent a step above the competition, I dare say. And I say that as someone who has started using Claude for Chrome and been really impressed with its abilities, and can see that a native Gemini one in Chrome, well, it would be a true disruptor in the browser field for sure.
I guess it'd be quite easy to know if this is a done or not done EOS style in terms of whether we got this prediction right or not, because obviously it will get launched. But what do you think are like the practical ramifications for marketers here? Is there anything that we should be thinking about or doing in the lead up to this potential launch?
Yeah, I think if people can get their hands on something like Claude for Chrome or have a play with Perplexity's Comet browser, just get used to briefing in these agents. It's really interesting to see them operate and how they get stuck. They work really well with very well specified tasks, even to the point of sometimes saying, then click on this button. So directing them through the UI. And what's interesting is I can see a world where it's almost like the skills.md, the skills markdown file that they recommend using for Claude code agents now. The more granularity and specificity that you put in a task, the more repeatable and predictable it's going to be. And I can easily see marketers that are regularly pulling stats from, maybe it's an SEO tool and you want to pull keyword ranking reports, or you're doing Google Analytics reporting and moving data from here to there. Having the steps of that task really well documented and then sticking that into one of these browser agents, that's going to be the thing that makes them go from interesting tool but makes a lot of errors to, oh, actually, this is something I'm going to use on a weekly, daily, even basis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I think the other thing, when this comes, as we expect it to Google's product suite, it's going to open up access to people, especially in a work environment that might not have the freedom and flexibility to use whatever tool they want to have a play around with. Maybe, you can still follow Martin's advice, because there's nothing to stop you doing this on your own personal computer and getting to grips with these tools, but actually using them for work. You might be in an environment where everything's Google based, and if Gemini doesn't do it, then I'm afraid you can't use it. Whereas obviously that would open this access up. I guess by extension, we can probably expect to see Copilot's maturation within Edge and probably similar capabilities for people who are tied to the Microsoft system.
Yeah, I think they've more or less confirmed that these kinds of abilities are coming to Edge and are being rolled out slowly in the coming months. I'd expect that probably to be in most people's browsers by Q2, but it'll be interesting to see how much of this ability they give people. And in the Copilot 365 environment, do the users with Copilot 365 chat, which is the free version of Copilot, do they get access to this, or is it only for people that have the 365 Pro license as well?
That'll be an interesting question, because certainly if you're using low cost or free based versions of these tools, once things get agentic, they eat tokens for breakfast and lunch and dinner, and they snack all day and they eat millions of tokens. Makes it much harder to deliver that stuff for free. Although I've got some ideas and some of the trends and predictions I'm going to make as to how they might still make money from those things. But nice one, Martin. That's a great first prediction. Martin and I kind of did this independently, so some of our predictions overlap a bit, but actually they're surprisingly not different, but take different angles. So my first prediction is actually about generative engine optimization, answer engine optimization, whatever you want to call it. I think we're going to see, we think we've seen the explosion in people trying to get good at this, and I don't think people have even begun. Now, I've been somewhat critical of companies piling on the AEO, GEO bus. I think people are right. They're just a bit too early, and they're probably not doing it the right way, which is, I do think we're going to need this. We do want to come up in AI answers, but whether or not there's some crazy, amazing AEO, GEO specific tactics that you need to deploy, or rather you just be really good at what was good for SEO, and a lot of it ends up being good for AEO, is maybe something we can discuss in a bit. But I was actually on a LinkedIn Live. The reason I put this one in is I was on a LinkedIn Live yesterday, and we had our head of paid ads as part of Supreme Optimization, which is the paid ads specialist within Supreme Group. And she was telling us how we haven't seen any reduction in Google ad clicks and spend. And we had a really good discussion. And sort of the conclusion that we came to is that at the current point, people are maybe using AI to better understand the product landscape, self-educate, learn the different options available, but then they still Google the product category or the product name, and then they go and visit the website to read about the product, and then they buy it there, which has all sorts of attribution nightmares associated with it, to be honest. But what I predict over the course of 2026 is more and more people turn to AI. It maybe gets slightly better at driving traffic to product pages, and so maybe we can track that a bit more. So I think most people will start to see their traffic directly from Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini increasing. But I also think we'll start to see the ability to purchase in these chatbots as well, which I think will be where AEO, GEO starts to become really important, right? Because you're missing out on purchases if you're not in the answers. And I want to talk about that as part of a separate prediction maybe in a little bit. But what I think that means is for marketers, we're probably going to be shifting towards the types of top of the funnel content that's like comparisons or the best X for Y. Some of this we've talked about already on the podcast, Martin. Things that answer common problems that buyer personas might be facing. And again, anybody who's done inbound marketing over the last 10 years, this probably sounds quite familiar, right? So if you're already doing this stuff, you're probably already doing quite well in AEO and GEO. And then I think it might also just change a little bit how people try and measure this. I mean, you've got Ahrefs and SEMrush and all these other platforms trying to offer share of AI voice tracking, which I suspect is not that useful right now because of just how dynamic these systems are, even compared to search. But I think people are probably going to still be desperate to figure out if their brands are being mentioned in AI answers. So maybe we see some platform development there. Maybe we see, ChatGPT offering the equivalent of a Google Search Console so that we can actually better understand how our brands are being mentioned when people are searching for, problems and solutions related to what we do. And then I think we'll continue to see people lean into high quality content to try and make sure that theirs is the brand that gets cited, especially, in a world of low quality AI filler. And I think it will be things like original research, proprietary information that you can't really get elsewhere. I think humans find that valuable. And I think AI chatbots will realize that humans find that valuable. And that's what they'll look for to surface a lot of the educational type content that they provide in their answers. So what do you reckon, Martin, on the continued growth of interest in GEO, let's call it for simplicity?
Well, it's not going away, that's for sure. Every workshop that I have has people saying, oh, how do I need to optimize for visibility in this? But I guess following on from that then, Paul, do you think the SEO role will just expand to encompass this? Or do you think it's going to be a new role, a new specialism in and of itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the simple answer is it's the same role with some additional strings required to add to the bow. Do you know, I actually think it potentially makes life exciting for SEOs again. Maybe they've always considered their life a bit challenging and exciting, but I think they're already very used to trying to reverse engineer and figure out what we needed to do to be top of Google search. And now they're having to do that to make sure their brands get cited in AI answers. And I suspect that a lot of the tactics and tools they've already used to using still apply. And I also expect there to be the ebb and flow of the currents, right? There's going to be an opportunity. We've talked about this on the pod before. If we get loads of product reviews and ChatGPT is obsessed with product reviews and it thinks the best products are definitely the ones that have the most reviews and the highest average review, and that's the one that it recommends every time. People obsess about reviews, and then ChatGPT and OpenAI will be like, oh, we need to dial that down a bit then because that's been gained. And I expect to see all of that play out. And who better to face that challenge than people who've been doing it in a slightly different form for the last decade? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, forget what I think. I'm really interested to know how we measure this in 12 months' time. What's the metric? What's the What's the done, not done in EOS terms, Paul?
Like whether or not it came true or not. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think what we should expect to see is an increase in the amount of traffic that we're getting from AI chatbots. So if you're not tracking this already, it's fairly easy to do. You should be able to see referral traffic from, for example, ChatGPT. You should be able to see referral traffic from Gemini, Perplexity. A lot of the brands that I have access to, I can see that there's a small amount of that traffic and it's going up. And interestingly, so Biostrata, the agency I co-founded, we currently get 8% of our traffic from AI chatbots, which is actually pretty huge, I think, compared to a lot of other brands. Most of the brands, Hala on the podcast I was on yesterday, we were talking about, she said most of the brands she's looked at recently is more like 1%. So it's still very, very small. But we should see that grow if this is true. Assuming that there's a mechanism that makes it easier for you to click through, which we don't know for sure. And I do think people are going to try and find a way to measure some sort of AI share of voice. I really don't believe the platform is there to do it yet. We would need to see a much better platform released, in my opinion. But I think people are going to want to try and measure it. It will end up being the equivalent of trying to track your keyword rankings, right? And trying to see how often you're mentioned in relevant queries. But I think the gold standard is going to be more referral traffic, at least to begin with. We'll talk about that as part of a different prediction in a moment. And tracking the conversion rate of that traffic, like do those people actually go and buy something from you?
Good old marketing fundamentals, right?
It's funny.
Are we getting good volume, and is it converting into something of value?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's so much of this stuff is going to be about applying fundamentals. I think where it'll get actually crazy is when things become more agentic and you type something in ChatGPT and it doesn't even show you the product recommendations. It finds the 3 products that it thinks are best. It engages in a price negotiation of the agent of one of the merchants, and then it buys it for you, and then it turns up at your house. As a marketer, you know, how are you going to measure that? Is that traffic? Is that conversions? How do you measure an AI agent conversion versus a human conversion? So I think all of these things hold true for now. Well, I think they'll probably hold true until the end of the year. Asterisk, we'll speak later. But yes, focus on the fundamentals for now. Maybe the world gets a bit shaken over the next 24 months. Oh, what have you got for us on your prediction number 2, Martin?
So mine is moving into the world of model development, and my prediction is that there will be no new flagship number jumps, so to speak, from any of the major model labs. So I don't think we're going to see OpenAI launch GPT-6. I don't think we're going to see Gemini release Gemini 4, or should I say Google release Gemini 4. And I don't think we're going to see Claude release Opus 5. However, I do think we'll see Claude Haiku 5.
Will we get a new Grok?
I'm not paying attention to that, to be perfectly honest. We might hear that there is a new Grok. Elon will tell us that there is one coming in the next 6 days that's going to clean your car and fly you to the moon. It may or may not happen. I choose, due to my own personal set of values and principles, to ignore that side of the AI landscape for the time being.
This really hamstring your ability to create inappropriate nude pictures then, I'm afraid, Martin, but that's probably for the best. What makes you think this? Do you think we're just outside of the cycle, or?
Yeah, it's as simple as that, to be perfectly honest. If you look at how long it took for them to go from 4 to 5, I think we'll see the point gains progressing. So I think we'll see 5.2 maybe turn into 5.5. I think we'll see Gemini turn into Gemini 3.5 at some point in the year. If I was really pressed, I could see Google launching Gemini 4 Flash, maybe, and doing one of the smaller models in a number leap. But I just don't see it. I think the cycle will tip over. They'll give each of these 18 months to run. And that's partly because I don't think we've got close to saturating the use cases for where they're currently at. I think there's still quite a lot of runway for them. And I know that they like to, all of the model providers, they talk about reserving the big leap for some new capability. And at the moment, I think the agentic piece, the computer use metric, is the one that is really interesting across the board. Like all the leap in GPT-5, the leap in Claude, and all of them have seen big leaps in computer use. And that hasn't really rolled out into the world yet. So I think once that actual application of it, and people are going, oh my God, this new skill that it's got is actually pretty good. And then people start going, when's the next one coming? We need more of this. Because, the general knowledge and intelligence of these things is already typically exceeding what I would say 90% of use cases, 90% plus use cases really needs. So yeah, I think once the computer use element is being more rolled out and more seen and felt widely by consumers and enterprise, then they'll say, right, now it's time for us to take the next numerical leap.
I think I agree with you, but in the interest of making this a dynamic conversation, the only reason I can think, there's a couple of things that spring to mind. The first one is some of the bigger GPU clusters, when they start to come online, I think maybe I shouldn't mention this now because I don't want to trigger you again, but I think Elon's got one coming online in the next month or two, hasn't he?
Oh, I'm sure he has. I'm sure he's told you that a week ago, and it's just like self-driving cars. It's just around the corner. He's going to be living on Mars in 2026.
Touche.
I'm sure he said that in 2015. And just need to dial it back.
Yeah, chill and be calm. There'll be gigawatt clusters coming online, loads of GPUs, incrementally every training run, assuming they're still even bothering to try and train new models, because I think they've sucked up a lot of the high quality data that's available, if I understand correctly. But let's say they're still doing ever bigger training runs. One assumes in theory, maybe they could go faster if they had 10x, 100x more I'm going to call it GPU power, because of course we're also getting better GPUs, not just more GPUs. So in theory, that might allow a training run to get done before the end of the year. I still think you're probably right. The other thing is your point about giving models new numbers when they do something cool they can't do now. And we already saw some of this with what should have probably been GPT-5 wasn't. It was GPT 4.5 probably, because its capabilities were not quite what was hoped for. And then OpenAI always also had that weird naming convention when thinking came out, right, where we had the O series of models. So maybe there's a research breakthrough and we get a new capability, or agents become much better, and we get GPT A1 or something, which is something completely different that does other cool stuff. But yeah, without being able to see inside the machine, I think that's quite hard to predict. So I think probably your prediction's safe. What does this mean for marketers? What do we have to keep an eye on here?
I think it means that you can, for the time being, and this would be my advice, regardless, really focus on squeezing as much value out of the tools that are in front of you today. The capabilities of these models is amazing, the agentic capabilities in particular. But if you're still playing around with these models for content creation and maybe helping draft awkward emails or ideation, you are barely scratching the surface of what these tools are capable of. Claude on its own has an amazing set of skills now for document creation. In fact, GPT 5.2 has a similar thing as well. For the first time this week, I asked it to create a PowerPoint for me, something that I've been doing with GPT, since it's had Code Interpreter, really. And And it's been able to create quite basic looking PowerPoint files. They were very blank and it used the basic template. Yesterday, in a workshop, I asked it to create a PowerPoint file. After 10 minutes of watching it in thinking mode, still going, I said, oh, don't worry, we'll come back to that later on. We broke for lunch. When we came back, it had finished thinking for 50 minutes and it had created a PowerPoint that was fully designed with graphics, with PNGs embedded within it, created its own layouts as a PowerPoint file. It was way beyond what I had seen it do before. Now, I can easily imagine a world where if I had known it could do that and I had specified things like the look and feel, the style guide of a PowerPoint template, it would have done it to the style that I instructed. But that's where we're going. These can actually execute tasks on again, that was a 50-minute thinking exercise. It's definitely the longest phase of thinking that I've seen ChatGPT do for me.
Yeah, that's so cool, because that's like quasi-agentic, right? It's done a load of stuff for you, but it's not what we're currently thinking is agentic in terms of tool use, like almost like overt tool use, MCP, browser agents that click on things for you. It's like it did a load of extra work for you and gave you this amazing output. That's super interesting. Okay, I agree. There's loads of power there to tap into before we get more muddle numbers. Right, next trend. So my next prediction, not trend, prediction, is by the end of 2026, you'll be executing purchases inside chatbot. So you'll search for, give me some ideas for a product for this. It'll make some recommendations. You'll click on the one that you want to buy and it will just be purchased. You won't go to a website. You won't fill in checkout information. It will just buy it for you. And it's interesting because this is a prediction show, not a news show. But this week, Google did actually launch a new open source set of tools and protocols for this type of experience that they call the Agent Payments Protocol, that they built with like Shopify, Etsy, Wayfair, Target, Walmart, and American Express and MasterCard and Stripe. All these people, all of these important merchants and payment gateways have all said they're going to support it. So I do think by the end of the year that we'll have that. And go on, Martin. What's your thoughts?
I was going to say, I think this one's a slam dunk in so much as Google have made that announcement, and on the 8th of January, Copilot Checkout and Brand Agents was announced by Microsoft as well in partnership with PayPal, Shopify, and Stripe. And yeah, I think this is going to become the de facto standard for online shopping experiences. I would also say that the brand agent element in particular is an interesting tool to watch out for if you're a marketer, because they are launching within so Microsoft Clarity, the analytics and user experience tool that Microsoft has given away for free for a long time. It's a kind of competitor to Hotjar. It's that kind of a tool for anyone that hasn't used it before. Within the Clarity brand experience and product experience, they are launching this brand agent, which is basically a way of integrating a Copilot assistant that understands your product range and can have an interactive chat with somebody on your website, and it integrates with the likes of Shopify. So you can just integrate seamlessly your product stream and then have an AI assistant guiding customers towards the checkout. And that was something that they announced last week.
I think you highlight a load of really important things there that marketers are going to need to be thinking about in order to be able to be ready for this shift. Maybe less so in the B2B world that you and I tend to operate in, but certainly in B2C, I think it's going to have ramifications. I'm going to extend my prediction even further then. I'm going to say there is going to be purchases made where people don't review the products. I'll give you an example. I am going to say, this is not a great example, but it's the one that instantly comes to mind. ChatGPT, buy Martin a product for his birthday and send it. And I'm not going to look at the products, not going to enter any data. It's going to buy it and it'll arrive at your door, and my credit card will be charged for it. Because I think we're going to start to enter the world of agentic purchases where we identify the broad outcome for certain requirements and product types, and we don't even approve the purchase. And there's going to be a bunch of stuff that needs to go with that, right? Like, I'm thinking, you'll have to probably approve a bunch of purchases for a few months just so the system can learn how often it gets your preferences when it, this is the product I would have bought. Is this the product you would have bought? And you have to tell it yes or no so it can learn, a bit more about you. And there'll be other things like budget caps and stuff like, no, I can't just go and buy something for you that's like, $5,000. To begin with, I think the way that we'll all get comfortable with this is, oh, my toothpaste is running out. Go get me some more toothpaste. And maybe it knows what toothpaste you've had in the past, and so it just goes buys it for you. Or maybe it finds out that there's a better toothpaste that's currently on sale, and then it buys that for you instead because it knows that cavity protection's the most important thing for you based on the last bit of toothpaste that you bought. And I think we're going to start to see a bunch of this stuff emerge. So how will we know if it's true? I think you'll be able to click. Firstly, you'll be able to click buy now in a AI chatbot experience like ChatGPT or Gemini, and it will just say, "Bing, done." And if the second prediction is true, we'll see it select the product, and you say, "Go buy me something like this," and then it just says, "Bing, done," and it's not. You didn't even select the product. You just gave it like an overall brief. What do you think about that second part, Martin? Do you reckon that's going to happen?
Yeah, I like that. And if I think about that from a consumer perspective, I can see the way that platforms like the payment gateways, Stripe, PayPal, they are probably going to end up holding a lot of the preference data. I can see them storing purchase profiles of you as a consumer that they then basically plug into the agents on different commerce platforms. And interestingly, and I did wonder what was going on there. This week when I went into PayPal, they offered me a PayPal debit card, which is linked to my main bank account. So it's just going to debit my ordinary account, but there's a kind of cashback. I think it's a 1% cashback incentive to it. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what the play is here. And it's making me think that, that's a great way for them to harvest data to get you to spend all of your money through PayPal rather than just the online transactions at certain retailers. But every time you go to a store in person, you go to the cinema, every time you tap and pay on the underground or anything like that, they can build that profile of you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a load of second order effects to this, right? Because it hasn't happened this way, because we can see this news coming out this week already. But imagine that this agentic payment framework emerged and it was being led by PayPal and no one else offered it for 6 months, and just how much PayPal could then come to dominate the payment gateway market, especially for maybe tech savvy consumers who want to be able to pay like this. And it doesn't surprise me that hasn't happened, because everyone's like, whoa, we cannot afford to be missing that train. I think it also brings a bunch of other second order consequences in line with what you said, because even if we look at supermarkets and their loyalty cards, right? Tracking what people buy is not new. Yeah. But in order for this system that I've predicted to work, the technology is going to need an ever more granular understanding of our buying habits. And to be honest, the richest understanding they can get of us, the better. because the better they're going to operate, the more seamless it's going to be. We're not going to trust a system that's too error-strewn, right? So having that data becomes critical, and everybody's going to do whatever they can to get as much of it as possible. And this is PayPal's play. My guess would still be that your tool of choice, like the pursuit of ChatGPT and Gemini to be your assistant of record, is critical. Because that's where they can build up this massive picture of you. I think the assistant's going to know a lot about me and a lot about you and a lot about hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. So they can do all of the aggregate predictions that probably AI will be quite good at sorting through all of that data to try and figure out, I'll start seeing things turn up at my house that Martin buys because it thinks that I'm just like Martin. And so I probably want that thing as well. For those of you that know Martin, that is an extremely scary thought for me.
You want to make sure you open those packages away from anyone else in the household.
Do you know, it'll just be all of the tech that you buy on a Kickstarter that maybe becomes massive, and maybe it'll be another one that Meta buys and you'll just get your money back.
That is an important point and an important clarification. In the last episode, I did say that after Limitless were acquired by Meta, I wouldn't get a refund from my investment. I'm going to call it an investment in the Pendant AI, but they did. They refunded me in full. So hats off to them. And I take it all back. I love Meta. They're a very responsible consumer first company.
Oh, ye of little faith. So what can marketers do? If you work in B2C, you should be starting to borderline obsess about this now, because I do think it's coming probably quite quickly. Once that payment capability is built in, I can see certainly certain age demographics, I can see their behavior change quite quickly, potentially. So yeah, I think probably making sure that I'm going to call it your website, but I'm sure there'll be a time when it won't be your website. It'll probably be handled by APIs that maybe know your stock levels and stuff like that. But just making sure that you have all of your product information machine readable, easy for AI chatbots to understand what would be the appropriate product for an appropriate requirement. Certainly the days of really unhelpful product names or names and identities based on number strings that don't mean anything. Like, I can see that would be a problem if that's how you still manage your product inventory, for example. And then I think just starting to try and measure some of that. Again, where's that going to be done? I think you'll probably be able to see the number of purchases in your, let's call it ChatGPT search console or whatever it may be. Hopefully
ChatGPT Merchant Center.
Right.
Yeah.
I would imagine we're probably going to need to see that emerge actually as a platform and a tool, because people are going to invest in this if they're confident it can grow bottom line revenue, but you're going to want to be able to track this and measure this and show ROI. Like, yeah, we work really hard to make sure our products are on ChatGPT, and hey, look at how many purchases we had. That seems like a bit of a no-brainer for them to build that in, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that will come alongside the launch of ChatGPT ads, which this isn't a prediction, but they'll be coming very soon.
You know what? That might just be my next prediction, Martin. But before we get to that prediction, let's do your next prediction.
So my prediction had to change. Actually, I had to revise my prediction because after I wrote the prediction, it came true within hours. I originally predicted that Anthropic would launch a mainstream desktop agent for knowledge workers, much like they have Claude Code for programmers and software developers. And I put that down in my prediction list, and within a few hours of me writing that down, Claude Cowork was announced, which is exactly that. At the moment, it's only available on Mac OS, but it is a Claude-based agentic assistant that is capable of executing tasks, and it doesn't require you to use Terminal or anything like an IDE if you're a programmer or a software developer. So if you haven't tried that yet, check it out. It's available for Mac users, and if you've got a Max plan on Claude, then go get stuck into that. But that is not my prediction. My revised prediction is associated to Anthropic and really comes off the back of that particular product launch. I predict Anthropic will launch a dedicated agent plan for teams. So I'm expecting them to release a separate subscription plan, branded and marketed as an agent plan for teams or organizations, distinct from their existing Pro, Max, or the team and enterprise plans already. And this is designed specifically around agentic task execution, and there will be metrics of things like how many tasks it can run, how many sub-agents you can run, and I think it will be really tied to a new product line. But that's what I expect, and busy marketing teams will be able to subscribe to this plan, and there'll be ready-made templates out of the box, and we'll see this already coming through the likes of Claude Code and Claude Co-work, where people are creating skills documents. I think we'll see a similar thing, but it'll be released under a new plan.
This is a super interesting one. I'm kind of glad that Claude Co-work, or whatever it was called, got released, because I think this is a wonderful speculation, especially because I think there's a lot more space here in terms of possibilities than meets the eye. And I'll give an example. Do you remember when we were watching a Google AI launch event? It was probably May this year. And they had an example of people collaborating with agents as co-workers in their Google chat platform. But I just saw it and I just sort of thought Slack, right? You'd Slack an AI co-worker as if you were slacking a human co-worker, like, oh, where's this project? And then the AI co-worker would come back and let you know. So I wonder if we might see the ability to hire agentic co-workers. So whether there's an agent plan or you pay $500 a month and you get, I don't know, an intern that's capable of X, Y, Z, right? They can project manage like this, they can do research like this, and they can execute tasks like this. And you hire them like you would a person. And that's what you get. And that's the way they frame it. That would be, I hadn't really thought about that until you said what you said. I don't know. What do you think? Like, how do you think that will play out?
I think the market will be fumbling around to try to find the right pricing structure to begin with, most certainly. And I think every one of those kinds of propositions and pricing structures will be tried. Hire a team, and it's the hire a marketing team, and they give you one coordinator or one strategist agent, one coordinator, and then a creative, an editor, a paid media specialist, whatever it may be. And you pay $2,000 per month and you get this cluster. But I do think it's coming. These organizations have got to monetize. They need to get more, or should I say, higher value subscriptions from companies. They're the ones that are going to be paying. It was probably 18 months ago that we first heard ChatGPT had spoken to investors and said they were preparing for a world where there is a $2,000 a month subscription and even a $20,000 a month subscription. And those haven't come to pass yet. We've got a $200 a month pro plan available across the board. You've got that in ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini have all got equivalent plans around that value. Where's that $2,000 a month plan? And what's that doing? And I think this is the year that we'll see it, whatever shape or form that looks like. But I think it will be around you buy a team or an individual agent with sub-agents. This is where we're going.
It's goldmine. I think you're right. I think they'll fumble around. Different companies and platforms will try different things to see what resonates with the market. Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned about, obviously we're both marketers, so that's why you think about hiring a marketing team in that way. I wonder if the reality would be, once you have an extremely capable agent, I wonder if it ends up like a chatbot. Like I think it was Bloomberg tried to fine tune or even create their own model based on all of their available finance data. And then it turned out to not be better. I think it was based on GPT-3, and it turned out to not be better than GPT-4. So you did all that training and you end up with a product that's worse than the next iteration of models. So one question would be, if you get a really good agent, isn't it just the same agents doing all those jobs? But and therefore, in theory, couldn't you just hire in inverted commas, hire one agent? But, and I think to your point, in order to monetize this effectively, this is how these platforms need to think, right? They'll want you to hire 5 team members, or 6 different divisional capabilities or whatever, so they can charge you 6 times instead of 1 time. And I do think, as we see the monetization of the models and the agents over time, trying to build an ever bigger gap between the cost of the tokens to get stuff done and the outputs and, dare I say, outcomes offered by the agents in terms of what their commercial value is. Obviously, the platforms want that to be as big as possible. And I think we'll get that we'll see that get stretched from both ends. I think token production for different types of tasks will drop. Maybe the systems will auto-route to cheaper, faster models when the task allows for it. But you as the consumer don't necessarily get the benefit of that, but they just get to deliver cheaper at the same time as finding commercial outcomes that are worth a lot of value or money to a business, and then charging based on the value, not based on the tokens.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to position them not just as it's this price per million tokens in and per million tokens out. They have to price it as, hey, look, the value that we are delivering for your organization, how we package that up and bundle it, that's our secret sauce. Don't you worry about that. But this, to your point, that was one of the things that I found really interesting when we saw the launch of Claude Opus 4.5, was its ability to achieve these frontier state-of-the-art benchmarks, but its token efficiency compared to the previous iterations was vastly improved. Basically, it didn't have to think as much. Therefore, the actual cost of execution was far lower. And that's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? There, the model providers want it to be as cheap to deliver as possible, but the value at the front end for you as a consumer remains high. And if they can squeeze that token use down while still saying, look, we've got this agent that will deliver amazingly, it uses the frontier model, that's where they're going to start putting in that extra bit of margin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite excited. The rumors are floating around for DeepSeek version 4, and for listeners that have been listening to the podcast or paying quite a lot of attention to AI, you'll know that some very big companies like Nvidia, their share prices took a wobble when DeepSeek version 3 was released out of China, because it was an open source model that you could effectively use for free that had frontier model capabilities at the time. It was right up there with the best ChatGPT and Anthropic Claude models, built basically with very low training costs, low information requirements. And DeepSeek version 4 is going to come out, and there's a lot of rumors already swirling about how they're going to make that better. And I think when historians write about this period, and I think they will, and when we all watch the movie, which I thought the whole movie was going to be about when Sam Altman got fired for 10 minutes at OpenAI, but I actually think this movie is now a 10-part Netflix series because of all the different twists and turns that we've seen, and I think we will see more of. But the fact that high-end NVIDIA chips were restricted to Chinese researchers and a bunch of these other factors that then pushed them to make innovations that they might not have had to have made if they'd have had access to the latest tech, and the sort of trade wars that we've seen between China and the US, and then China taking a much more open source approach to AI. All of these things are all playing in together, and they're all sort of compounding on each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some really interesting stuff in DeepSeek version 4 that has some of the things you described, Brian, like a model that almost as a don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like an emergent capability, gets a better answer than any other model, but somehow does it in half the tokens than any of the other models would have done. And distillation and all these other things, I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think we're going to need it, because if we've got agents running around after us doing all this stuff for us, all the token burn is like going to be absolutely insane. If we think the amount of AI or intelligence required right now is a lot, like it's nothing compared to everybody's got 100 agents. They don't know they've got 100 agents. They've just got a Gemini assistant on their phone, but they've basically got 100 agents running after them all the time. We're going to need all of those innovations anyway. Nice one. That's a cracker. Right. My next prediction, and this finishes my AI chatbot Holy Trinity, is that ads come to the AI chatbots. There's been so many rumors through 2025 that this was coming. Supposedly ChatGPT was very close to launching some sort of ad experience, was certainly testing an ad experience towards the end of last year, and opted not to let it out too much into the wild. I think we're going to see ads. We see all these people trying to make sure their brands show up in generative search answers, whether that's when you search on Google or whether you're searching on ChatGPT. And as we have seen, one of the great ways to shortcut making sure your brand shows up in those searches and in those conversations is to pay. And what a fantastic way for all of these platforms to make some of the money back, given the huge amount of costs associated with training and managing and inferencing models. You mentioned it earlier, Martin. Seems like you're very much in the camp of ads are coming.
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, it was reported last week, I think I saw that OpenAI is actually trialing their ad product internally with their staff. So obviously trying to get a feel for the user experience and try to make it work in a way that is not particularly annoying for people. Because let's be honest, as we've discussed in the past on the show, ads change the user experience in quite a fundamental way, particularly when you're dealing with a chatbot that you go to for advice. You look for feedback on the best product in this scenario. And when you're giving you're having communications with it in a way that is quite different to the way that you would with, say, a normal search engine, and it knows an awful lot about you, you have a different trust threshold with that product. So they're going to have to move quite cautiously through this terrain, I feel. The moment that the ads start to make people trust the product less, I think that will be a huge kicker for it. And I think they are aware of this. I've seen Sam Altman address this directly in podcasts and interviews in the past. But it's one thing being aware of it. It's another thing actually making an ad product which A, doesn't destroy trust in the brand, but also B, does deliver the promise to advertisers.
Do you know, spot on. I sort of flip back and forth on this. On the one hand, it feels like the stakes for getting this ad experience right when in an AI conversational format are much higher than they were for getting ads right in a search box, right? So for Google ads, Google search ads, for example, for the reason you said, right? Like people are developing quasi-personal relationships with these chatbots. There's a level of trust that comes with the interactions that they just can't afford to ruin through the ad experience. So they really do have to get that right. And I think that's why we're also seeing, that people are, platforms are experimenting with this already. You've mentioned, some of the stuff that ChatGPT and OpenAI have been doing, but Perplexity's been having some experiments as well with things like sponsored follow-up questions and answers. Microsoft is looking at some Copilot native ad formats like showroom ads that like live inside the conversation. They're not sort of on the side of the conversation. And I think we're going to see the platforms have to experiment a lot to figure out what is an appropriate way to deliver a sponsored experience inside these platforms without just making people really mad, because I think the stakes are higher.
And to that point, actually, I saw a really interesting business model. I don't know the name of the company, and it's going to bug me now, but ad-sponsored inference, where you get, so this is for people using it for development. They're actually selling access to the frontier models like Claude 4.5, but they are running ads. So they're giving you $300 a month worth of tokens at the moment in this sign up, but then they are selling you ads over your token use and inference through their platform.
Interesting. So if I've understood, I probably understood incorrectly, but the first thing that springs to mind is basically this is just another surface to show banner ads on, and you can have your AI chatbot cheaper if you're willing to have ads on the left and the right hand side of the search experience. Is that what you're suggesting? And the ads are somehow contextually relevant, but it's mostly so you don't have to pay $100 a month.
Yeah, that seems to be the pitch at the moment, and I think the people that are going for it, the audience is predominantly very techie developer types. So no doubt the advertisers that are working with this particular brand offering this ad-sponsored inference, they are probably brands targeting that particular community. I'm not sure on the intricacies of it, but it's an interesting model to see start launching to the market.
Yeah, or imagine something I say worse. It's hard for me to imagine that this ad experience is pleasant in any way, and I really think that people will clamour for an ad-free experience that they're willing to pay for. Think $5 a month for Netflix with ads, $20 a month for Netflix without ads. Like Spotify style, you can't keep your conversation going unless you have this ad pop up in ChatGPT for 15 seconds. Then you can click the X to get rid of it, and then you can continue a conversation.
Just like the mobile gaming, watch this video. Oh my God, I can't think of anything worse. That would, yeah. Well, there's a reason I subscribe to so many services, and I am so ad allergic. I'm not sure that's a terrible way of phrasing it, but yeah, I will steer clear of ads in any way that I can.
Imagine if the ad play, because I'm pretty sure this is Netflix's play too, if the ad play is just a way to make the ads so annoying that people are like, do you know what? This is worth $30 a month to not have to put up with this experience anymore. And they don't actually intend to make any money out of the ads themselves. They just want to push people to actually sign up for a paid version of the platform. I mean, that's another possibility, I guess.
That's certainly the way that YouTube seems to have gone. And let me tell you, that YouTube premium subscription is the last subscription that I would ever give up. You will claw that out of my cold, dead hands.
I couldn't agree more. You're trying to watch like a video and you're right into it, and then without warning, it just goes with volume that's like 30% higher than the actual thing you're watching. Usually an AI voice now as well, doing the voiceover. It turns out if I only click on that ad, I can finally win at crypto. Yeah, so what does it mean for marketers on this one? Ultimately, I think begin preparing for being able to buy your way into this generative answer experience. Keep a very close eye on it. But in the same way as there was a juxtaposition between SEO and ads, I think there will be here as well. I think if you can find that there are aspects of important conversations that you would want to be part of, that for whatever reason your brand isn't getting mentioned, you're going to have to pay to shortcut your way in there, whilst constantly looking for optimization capabilities to try and make sure that your products and brand is the one that AI is mentioning, let's call it natively, or, as the genuine organic result, if you will. And I think one of the things that could be interesting is how we bid for these placements. If it's banner ad style, I think it will work exactly like it does now to a certain extent. But if they really double down on trying to make sure the product recommendations are really good and natural and fit with what the person would genuinely want to buy, having great products is going to be important, right? And having, I would hope, honest, authentic, easily machine readable, comprehensive product information that made the AI feel, in inverted commas, safe or accurate, making that recommendation to the human, because they had enough information to base their decision on. So lots of content around case studies, data, and just basically supporting information that makes the AI feel like it's making a good recommendation is going to be critical.
Another thing I would say for advertisers thinking about this as a future play is thinking back to the things that Gary Vee has often said about Google ads early on and how undervalued they were. That these will be places where there is some short-term arbitrage, where you can get great value because there will be a slower shift from the competition as well. So I think there'll be a bit of quick wins for people that move onto these platforms and adopt early, although that gap will soon close. But yeah, don't be afraid to shift some of your media spend onto them when they initially come about.
That's really interesting. I'm probably way too inside the system to know, but my gut feeling is, because of the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, I think a lot of marketers are nervous and are kind of annoyed and feel like probably they missed some of those early arbitrage opportunities, whether it was Google search ads, sponsored content on social. And everybody that I speak to seems way more primed for like knowing that this is going to be a thing, thinking I need to get in there early while there's a lot of value to be had. You speak to way more marketers than I do, Martin. Am I too inside the system? Is nobody really thinking about this? Or
yeah, I think you are, to be completely honest. I think there will be a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year window. And then part of that will come about with, if people are happy with their media spend at the moment, they'll be reluctant to reallocate budget. I think there's just going to be a slow shift. Agencies that are delivering this are going to have to be figuring out how to use the systems. So yeah, I just think there'll be a period where it might be a good place to play in the paid media space.
that is a very fair point. I'm also not particularly risk averse when it comes to speculating on new channels. And it's very easy to forget all of the new channels that people speculated on and invested time in that came to nothing. What was that one? There was one at the start of the pandemic. I can't remember what it was called, where basically it was like you could dial into a call that everybody was on. Do you remember what that was called?
It was chat. How was it? House. It was something house, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. And everyone was like, yeah, this is the new channel which everyone's got to be on. And it was like super hot for like 2 months. And then it was disappeared into the ether. So yeah, you can double down on channels and not win. It does happen reasonably frequently as well. So yeah, I guess maybe that could put people off as well. I don't think this is going to be one of those, to be honest, but people might feel like that. Let's go on to your next prediction then, Martin.
Following on from what you said earlier about this is not a particularly newsy episode, but also there was some news in December that was very relevant to this next prediction. Meta acquired my favorite agentic tool, Manus. And Manus is a tool that I've been using for months now. I've got the subscription. I've been stress testing it. I've made some great little fun apps. I've had it execute entire workflows for me. I've been incredibly frustrated with it at times. I just started to feel like I was getting the hang of how to instruct it, specify tasks to it, and all of that kind of stuff. And then Meta came along and gobbled it up. Although, importantly, they do say they are going to run it as a standalone app. But this acquisition did make me think about the future of the Meta marketing suite. So with that in mind, my prediction is Meta will launch an agentic support agent via Messenger or WhatsApp. And this will be a customer facing, business interfacing agent that will be able to plug and play with almost any platform that your business operates with. So I'm expecting the computer use functionality to be used from Manus. They'll basically use this technology stack to basically offer to customers and to small business owners a customer support agent or whatever it may be. And it will be able to go on to the websites and answer questions. You'll be able to upload knowledge documents, and it will be powered in the back end by the new iteration of the Llama series of models, or whatever the next iteration is in the closed source future of large language models from Meta. But yeah, I expect them to have a bot that is an official Meta product. It can take actions, so order lookups, returns, bookings, not just through official partner integrations, but I expect it to go a bit beyond that. And it can hand off to humans while maintaining context.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I assume they have a strategy, but I think probably Mark's strategy is we'd love to have Martin as a customer. So let's buy the company that issued his pendant. Let's buy his favorite agent, because he spends so much money on lifetime deals. Like, we need this guy to be, an active customer and he's got a very famous podcast as well about AI and marketing. So I think they're just coming after you, but it's a bit of a shame for you to have another one of your things bought up by the least trustworthy company in many people's eyes, allegedly, etc., etc. So sorry about that, Martin, that you've had to go through that again, but hopefully you'll still have good access to Manus to try and do the things that you want to do. And super interesting that, because it will bring those capabilities more quickly to people who wouldn't be willing to go play with the Manus.
I think they'll be able to turn it into a easy to use interface. They'll be able to productize it. They've just got so many more heads available to think about that, rather than a small team of engineers thinking about how to make the thing work. They'll be able to plug it into their existing AI suite. They've got so many ways that AI is powering the advertising platform. But when they can then plug this into the interfaces where people are already chatting, so WhatsApp and Messenger, I think there's just going to be a huge amount of unlock for end customers. They'll be able to productize this agentic experience. And in some ways, what I'm describing here is what I expect from Google with a productized agentic suite, and Claude with a agent plan that we talked about earlier. I just think this will be bundled into their existing product offering, and the way that they'll monetize it will be through advertising, because you'll be spending more money. They won't be charging on token cost. They know that it will be based on spend more advertising across our suite of platforms where people are already hanging out, and we'll manage the transactions, we'll manage the customer service, we'll manage the sales process. Don't worry about that, hand off to us, and we'll do all the integrations in the back end as well.
You could see the attraction of a platform like that. I think you're right. I know we were going to leave our big agent discussion to the end, because 2026 being the year of agents, as it almost certainly will be, but seeing as we're on this topic of Manus, I think you're absolutely right that this has to be productized and brought to market in a way that sort of early adopter hobbyists are willing to take a certain approach, but most people are not going to be. And to bring this to life, I tried a new platform this week called Do Anything. It's basically like Manus. It's a chatbot. You give it a big picture outcome that you're trying to achieve, rather than like ask it a question, and then it comes up with a plan. It spins up some sub agents that can do different things, and then it goes off and it tries to execute your plan. $20 a month. I thought I'd give it a try for a month. My $20 of credit lasted for 55 minutes. And the outcome that I chose was one of the stock outcomes that it suggests that you try, which was to create a monetizable newsletter that has 2,000 subscribers. So the first part of the process was kind of fun. It was like, here are some topics that are trending right now. Which of these are most interesting that you might want to start a newsletter on, or suggest your own? So I chose something. Then it came up with its plan for how it was going to execute. It tried to create I think the way to pronounce it is Beehive, but it's one of the newsletter platforms like Substack. It went to try to create an account for me and just got stuck and just burning credits trying to help me help it set up an account. And all I could see was it trying the same thing again and again and again. And I'd be like, should we take a step back and have a think about whether this is working or not? Which it did try and do several times. But one of its ways of getting around this frustration was to go execute some of the other steps in the plan that I would have preferred come later. So it started creating all these lead magnets. It came up with this outreach strategy to bloggers that it was going to try and get them to subscribe to our newsletter by promising to subscribe to theirs or some other strategy. Which, if I can't even get the newsletter live because the system doesn't work, I certainly don't need all that stuff. By the way, this is consuming credits like mad in the background. And it started sending pitch emails. Yeah, I didn't get to check the pitch emails because part of its value prop that makes it slightly different from Manus is it has its own email address and you get to choose its name like it's a person.
Yeah.
So this newsletter's not by me, it's by, I had this crazy name like Carlton Nightingale or something like that. Because it gave me options and you just keep hitting next and it just gets more and more creative the more times you hit next. And there was something about Carlton from Fresh Prince with the idea of having like Nightingale. That just seemed right to me. Didn't make it more capable though. So yeah, it started pitching. And I was like, you're pitching a newsletter that doesn't exist because you can't even log into the system and create the newsletter, even though this is the stock thing that they recommend that you try. So, yeah, I didn't invest in any more credits. And the reason for this story, Martin, is that is a hobbyist's playground. That is not a commercially ready approach by any stretch of the imagination. And so to your point, they have to productize that in a way that people can actually use it. And then the second point is, when this gets good enough, my goodness, are we going to get deluged with crap content? My goodness. Because if you imagine, the whole value proposition here is, I should have come back and I'd had 2,000 subscribers. So 500 odd people who really didn't deserve to get pitched by this bot would have got pitched. And a load of content about whatever the topic was that added probably no unique value because it was a regurgitation of stuff that's already available on the web is getting sent out to people. By the way, not accurate probably. So because I'm interested in science, it was a science-based one. What if it's telling people absolute tosh? That's incorrect. So I think there's quite a sizable gap to traverse before this prediction's possible.
Well, I think that goes to, well, first of all, Paul, actually, let me just say, I wish I hadn't told that story because you're going to make people think that agents aren't very good. And actually, some of them are really good. And we need people to understand that to make agents really good, you need to know how to specify correctly. And they can do that by speaking to the likes of me and you.
Correct. Not me. But this was just an experiment. Come on, people, it was just an experiment. The system promised. And that's why I was like, well, show us what you can do then.
That does go to the point about, it's AI slop, it's bots speaking to bots, it's bots pitching to bots that are signing up to bots, reading bots, regurgitating bots. It's just a bot hellscape. But taking it back to Meta just for a second, I can see a world where that, even at the customer service side of things, like having seen how Manus actually works and having experienced some of the major frustrations of trying to get things all working inside the Meta platform, particularly when you're dealing with myriad different e-commerce platforms, CRM platforms, marketing automation platforms, for lots of small business owners, trying to plug together all of these different bits is really hard. Whereas I can see a world where Meta actually deploys the Manus bot as a do it for you agent. You tell us your your login for your CRM, or you take over the computer use, and we'll hook up your Meta advertising platform to your Shopify account and make sure that all the reporting is correct. And we'll do that for you. And they're not using a team out in Bangladesh or whatever it is that's running their customer service. They're empowering it with the Manus bot agent.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the value prop of getting this Do Anything app to do that was it kind of misses the point of how this will really need to be rolled out, which is human in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
It's automation and autonomy in low risk areas that don't have a big impact. That's why I was like, why have you just sent a pitch email? What are you doing? Like if I hired a junior and they started sending pitch emails without running them through me, there'd be hell to pay. Like I'm not going to let an AI hallucinating bot do it. So that's not how you deploy these things. You find those use cases, you carve them up, and you stress test to make, and you start in the safe places where a mistake is not going to have that, too big of ramifications. And I think you're right. That's exactly how they will then bring that offering to people, and it will have to evolve and it will have to mature. And I would be extremely skeptical of any platform that went from where we are now to describe the business you want and check your bank account in a month, right? Like, no, not going to be like that. Right, in the interest of time, because we've had our listeners on for a while now, I'll move on to my next prediction. But I'm going to speed this up and go through the quick version, Martin, and then let's talk about agents a little bit at the end. So a couple of other quick predictions that I had was that I think AI memory is going to get solved, and that, persistent personalization becomes the default. One of the big problems with AI models right now is you start a chat and you're starting from fresh. It doesn't know anything about you, doesn't remember anything else that you said. Everything's based on stuffing a load of stuff into the context window, which has pros and cons. It's extremely compute intense to do that, burns more tokens. And the agents are only, the chatbots are only so necessarily at pulling the right thing from their context at the right time. As an aside, I'm seeing a lot at the moment of when I create like a custom GPT or a gem or even a project, the obsession of the chatbot to use every single thing in its context in the answer. It's like, the user gave this to me, it must be important. It's like, you've got 20 documents. This question is actually only about one of the documents. Be smart enough to realize you don't have to reference what's in all the other documents. It's not relevant. Anyway, this was supposed to be the quick one. But there's been some interesting newsy stuff this week, because there was a couple of papers, one of which looks like a new capability for memory that we might see in DeepSeek version 4, which is interesting. And then MIT released some research for a new memory capability. We know the labs are all over this at the moment, but obviously it becomes a fairly massive game changer for lots of use cases when AI can start to remember things and access memories in a much better way than it does now, both in terms of, as a consumer, capturing all of this insight about you over time that Martin and I have talked throughout the podcast, but also as a business user, not have to constantly explain certain things about your products, your customers, your business, and just having that information available and accessible in a way that the chatbot remembers in a smart way. So I think we'll see memory get solved. Thoughts on memory, Martin?
It's the missing piece of the puzzle, and some people argue that cracking that is basically the key to cracking AGI. So yeah, if they get there, that will be quite something. In fact, it's interesting you mention about memory and the use of it. I find, as much as ChatGPT, I don't think it is the best model. I prefer Claude, particularly for professional tasks. So if I'm doing stuff in CRM or if I'm coding a little thing together, very much prefer Claude. But my daily driver, the thing I turn to, the thing that is on my second screen at all times, is ChatGPT. And why is that? I think it handles memory and personalization better than any of the others at this moment in time. Case in point, yesterday I put a prompt into it and it referenced something that I haven't given it in its custom instructions. It referenced something from a chat that I'd had with it a long time ago about clients that I'd worked with over the previous 6 months. And it pulled that information into the chat because it was able to search across. Now that's using the RAG, the retrieval augmented generation method of managing memory. But it did a really nice job of it. And I can see that when they do crack this infinite memory piece, not only will it be good for those kinds of contextual understanding, but it will facilitate learning that's beyond just kind of in context learning.
Great. I mean, that unlocks so many self-training capabilities of AI as well. I mean, we could go deep down the AI rabbit hole here, but I think you're right as a user. And I think, what does this mean to marketers? This is where personalization at scale in your marketing becomes possible, is if platforms understand your target customers in that level of detail. Some critical questions that come up is, how can you capture as much information as your customers as possible? We talked about PayPal trying to get some of that, but how can you do that? Will the chatbots sell or rent this information in some form to brands as part of their paid offering? Like, you don't know who all of the 20 people who would like your product are, but we do. And that's actually what becomes part of serving relevant ads to people, is just having that crazily deep understanding of them. So, we've talked a little bit in the past about how important it is for brands to really focus on their first party data that they're capturing on customers and how they might use that. Because the other side of this will be then using AI to execute hyper-personalized campaigns at scale in a way that humans couldn't do. So there's those sort of two parts of the pie there, really. But yeah, I just feel like memory, as you said, is going to be one of those critical pieces, and I feel like it's going to fall this year. What was your last prediction, Martin? Oh, this is one. That's a fun one. I'm opting out of this as well, Martin. You just tell the listeners what you think.
So this is a bold one, as someone who is in and around the industry, but my prediction is that UK marketing agency headcount will fall over the next 12 months. There's a difficult one to measure. The best metric that I can find is from the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, who have an agency census. And they have their 2024 figure that I found, which was 26,787 employees across their members. I predict that number will fall. I think we will see more companies doing more in-house. So they'll make their marketing teams more efficient. But that's client side. And I also think agencies will themselves be able to do more with less. And as such, through the use of things like agentic teams, I think there will be reduced demand for headcount. Over to you, Paul.
Obviously, as someone who works within a marketing agency group, I don't have an opinion, but obviously I always have an opinion regardless. Do you know what I can't decide? Is with more capabilities to get stuff done, to reach customers better, to enter new markets, that as long as demand keeps up, and there's a big if on that, honestly, but if it does, or if it were to, I could see a world where expectations, workloads, and outputs scale with the new capabilities. So rather than cutting headcount, it's like, cool, you folks can now better market to these groups of people, help us be more successful in all of these verticals. And by the way, we're going to enter some new markets because we've, now we can do these things at a scale across our entire business, to be honest, not just marketing, that we couldn't do before. I think eventually demand runs out when you go down that route, but in the short to medium term, especially for early movers, I actually think the ability to 10x the impact of your competitors is what makes you grow. So client side, if you're able to outcompete the market through effective marketing by using agent teams, I think you'll grow. And I think you'll hire people to help you do even more of that. The same for agencies. I think for agencies that stick their head in the sand, or for client teams that stick their head in the sand, at some point they'll be asked hard questions, and I don't know, businesses will then have to try and adopt AI, and whether they'll outsource to get that in the first instance, which has happened a lot over history, which again would suggest agencies getting more work, not less, at least in the short to medium term. So I don't know, it's difficult to predict, but the one thing that's true, I think, is that you're not getting replaced by AI yet, but you will be replaced by someone who uses AI if you don't.
Well, that's the kind of second part of my prediction. And I wasn't sure which one to lead with, really, because frankly, that prediction that I've made there could very well come true, and it could have absolutely nothing to do with AI and everything to do with a changing economic landscape, right? There could be an economic crash, and you know what? Across the board, headcounts fall in all sorts of industries. So yeah, that is a difficult one to pinpoint exactly on AI. To that, though, about replaced by people doing AI and using AI and being AI literate, an additional part of my prediction with regard to the agency space is that I expect we are going to see a significant increase in the number of job vacancies or placements, whatever it may be, that are head of agentic or similar, both client side and agency side.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we had a dedicated section on agents, but I think we've touched on them enough throughout the podcast, so we don't have to subject the poor folks to too much more on it. But I do think that 2026 is the year where we start to chip away at some of those agentic use cases in a sort of manageable fashion, like we've both talked about, and that marketers who get to grips early with using Claude Code or Claude Cowork or Manus and Gemini's equivalent, that they have their, I can't remember what it's called, but they have their like workflow, work streams type solution that's kind of Zapier meets agentic capabilities. I think we'll continue to see that emerge. And I think in the first instance, as marketers, we'll have to be proactive in seeking out those solutions, testing them, and being early adopters and finding where those arbitrages are that we can just like get a load done through agents and have a bigger impact. And then eventually it will be baked into Google Gemini or in ChatGPT or whatever in a way that brings it to the masses, because it's much easier to do. The equivalent of send your agent coworker a message in Slack type stuff. But I think in the first instance, it won't be that. It will be people playing around with Claude Code or Claude Cowork to figure out what can it reliably do for me in my specific context. And that people who are able to do that, to your point, will be absolutely in massive demand. They will be the job specs that go up, and those will be the people who are getting hired, who are people who know how to orchestrate agents to get stuff done against the capabilities that are happening today, and also enough on the pulse to evolve as the systems evolve.
It's not the head of human resources, it's the head of agent resources. And that's the role that we'll see in 2026.
Well, thanks for sharing your predictions with me, Martin. That was the first time I got to hear them as well, dear listener. I enjoyed them. I hope you enjoyed them as well. And I love hanging out with you on these podcasts, Martin, so I shall look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Can't wait. Speak to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Artificially Intelligent Marketing. To stay on top of the latest trends, tips, and tools in the world of marketing AI, be sure to subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again next week.